Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. I understand we are actually being live streamed somewhere. My name is Simone Fishburne. I am a board member of Women in Bio, an organization for promoting careers, leadership, and entrepreneurship for women in life sciences, with a booth at 63 something, which is 38. The next booth is going to be harder for me to remember. I am also, in my day job, editor of BioCentury Innovations, the translational publication of BioCentury that really covers the early stage activities in the industry, all the exciting things that are going on, being fueled by men and women across the industry. I have some fabulous panelists. I'm going to start with a full disclosure. My boss on my left, one of my bosses, I have several of those. Karen Bernstein is the chairman and co-founder, of course, of BioCentury, and knows all the movers and shakers in our industry, I would argue. And as I think it's fair to say, you've received awards and things for being a prominent woman in the life sciences. I've seen them on her desk. Not sitting in order. John McDonald is VP of Corporate Development and Strategy at Biogen, who have been supporters of Women in Bio, are obviously located in Massachusetts, and are supporters of the Board Ready program that we're going to hear about today. Dawn Hocevar is my former partner in crime from my Women in Bio days, and she is currently the president-elect of Women in Bio, and next year will be running it, and she is one of the architects of this program. We have Michael Rice, who is the founding partner of Life Science Advisors, and they are a major backer of the Board Diversity program. We have where is your name? Jodie Morrison, who is I'm looking for your name. Here it is. I told you, actually, everybody, I put the wrong glasses on for this. I have Jodie Morrison here on my sheet, President and CEO of Tokai Pharmaceuticals, which is a Boston-based, as I understand it, also innovative company. So welcome. One of the first people I actually want to introduce you to is not on the stage. It's Carolyn Broom, who's an associate at Brinks, Gilson and Lyon and the co-chair of the Women in Bio Executive Development Leadership Committee. So what we're here to discuss today is a program called the Board Ready program to meet the goal, or to make some steps towards the goal of redressing the imbalance of gender on boards in the biotech industry. So this is a creative program that Women in Bio put together, and Carolyn's the architect. So I'm going to start by asking her to give just a few words on how the program works, and then all detailed questions afterwards will go to her, as well as email requests, not to me.
Thank you, Simone, and welcome. We're really excited to launch the Boardroom Ready program at WIB this year. This program was inspired by Biogen's Raising the Bar program that was so successful last year. So we're thankful to industry leaders like Biogen for helping with some of the inspiration behind this program. As Simone mentioned, the goal of the program is to increase the diversity in corporate boardrooms around the country and around the world. This program is seeking executive candidates to undergo a rigorous training at George Washington University in corporate board governance, in investor relations, in risk management, all the sorts of things that boards deal with on a daily basis. After the training program, our candidates will then be matched with mentors, and we will work to help them find available corporate board placement. So if you have any questions, you can go to Women in Bio's website, and we are looking for sponsors, coaches, mentors, and applicants. So thank you very much.
You can all go now. No, we won't. Now we'll have some questions. So I want to start with something that we're going to spend a very small amount of time on, about half a minute, and then move on to our panelists. two of the people here today might have been here anyway, but I'm looking at Karen and Michael. And a lot of the impetus for this being in the format that it's in right now came out of an event following a JP Morgan that raised hackles, let's say, prompted Karen and Kate Bingham to write a letter. Life Science Advisors took that very seriously and decided that the best way forward, and I'll let them speak for themselves, was really to take an action and not just apologize. Apologies are great, but actions are more. But I actually want to move on from there and start by asking Karen, who really, I did mean it, you do know so many people in the industry, and the response to that letter was overwhelmingly male, not overwhelmingly, but at least more than 50% was male. And what I want to ask you really is, you know, the numbers are clear, and I can show some of the numbers, that there clearly are many, many more men than women on boards, and I'm sure you'll contend that there's no active exclusion going on. But what are the cultural realities behind that lead to that, and is that something that we should even take active steps to redressing?
So
can we
is this on? Yes. And I've got it up to my lips, right? So I'm supposed to eat this microphone like a rock star.
She is a rock.
So I've just joined 2 corporate boards. I think that the people on those boards sought me out very specifically, probably not because I'm a woman, but because of my experience in the industry. Should people look for women specifically? Or, to me, so I asked, let me circle around this question a little bit. I asked one of my CEOs in prep for this panel, having joined his board, did it change because I was a woman? And his answer was, no, it changed because I'm an individual, and every individual who joins a board brings something different. They bring a different personality, they bring a different set of experiences, a different set of networks, etc. On the other hand, I think that there's clearly a shortage of women at the top levels. Now, some of that is by choice. Women make certain choices, I believe, that make it harder for them to be CEOs, or they don't want to be CEOs sometimes because they make certain lifestyle choices. And that's going to mean that the numbers are smaller. And, so my experience right now and I'm now the head of, the chair of governance and nominating at one of the companies I'm on, and I am struggling to find a qualified person of any gender who's not all boarded up, has too many boards, has too much of a day job, who can even do the job. So I think, the more people you can find who are qualified, the better. But there's a serious shortage of any type of person who's qualified to be on a board.
So actually that raises something that Michael brought up when we chatted before. So Michael, I want to ask you a couple of things. First of all, I know you actually also have a program that is targeting the pipeline, younger women, right, in addition. But what were the factors that made you focus on getting women on boards? I mean, there are many things going on in the industry, many ways of addressing this. So why did you look at the board level? And then my follow-on to that is, in response to what Karen said, you, I think, mentioned some of the struggles that you've had when you've put what you think are qualified candidates in front of, or female candidates in front. So can you talk a little bit about what you do at Life Science Advisors and answer those questions?
Sure, happy to. So I think we are uniquely positioned with our companies. We work with we work with roughly 80 companies, and in the relationship that we have with these 80 companies, we are very close with the management teams. And I think, the boardroom issue clearly is an issue. As we've done the work and we really understand that there is an industry issue as far as the number of women on boards, we felt we were uniquely positioned to be influential and hopefully affect change. I think the challenge, and where I'm already frustrated, because I think we would be able to, in the last 100 days since we've really truly been involved and engulfed in this whole issue, was that a lot of the candidates that we had brought to some of our companies, the first reaction is they don't have any boardroom experience. And of course, my reaction is, so what? What does that mean? I'm on 2 boards. I know what it's like to be on a board. I understand what it is to governance. I think actually it's the opposite. If you don't have boardroom experience as a woman, typically that person is going to be much more energetic, excited about sitting on a board. And as we all know, when you have somebody that's got a day job, is on 5 other boards, it's challenging. So again, we are really excited to be a sponsor of Boardroom Ready program, because what that does is give some of the women that we can put in front of our companies the experience, the qualifications, understanding the commitment, what it is to sit on a board, what it is to govern, and we're really excited to be a part of this whole program.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Jody now, and springboarding back to something Karen said. So you're the CEO of Tokai Pharmaceuticals, and it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, did it change? Did my board change? Did the board change when I joined? And so, what are your observations in executive management of the addition of one person, and whether it actually does make a difference to have more women there in terms of the tone, like if you're one and then there's 2 or 3. And I also want you to talk a little bit about the MassBio's Gender Diversity Initiative, which you're obviously not obviously, but which I should tell everybody you are the co-chair of, and how that actually plays into your role as CEO. Is that an important, is that just your side gig, or is that an important thing that helps you as a CEO?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start there on the MassBio initiative. So the Gender Diversity Initiative that we're kicking off, that Abby Selnicker and I are co-chairing for MassBio, is really going to be focused on the fact that there's going to be an issue with our talent pool. There already is, right? 50% of women entering into the industry. You've got a fair balance there, but when you get up to the executive leadership, when you look at the board, you have a huge lack of women sitting in those seats. So as we continue to move towards keeping women at the 50% mark or higher in our companies, the talent pool to move people forward into the executive leadership is too small if we're only looking at 50% of our staff. And so the real goal of the initiative is to really think about how we can improve that and keep that going as we move forward, how we can build networks for women so that they can actually have other groups where they can get in and positive networking experiences, and then to really think about board readiness and board placements as a second tier piece to that. There's great initiatives going on like the Women in Bio initiative. We want to sort of tack on to that. So it's a broad stroke approach to it, but really coming from the heart of the fact that there's a talent pool loss if we don't address this. So we think that's really, really important. As far as it being a side gig, it's actually something I'm tremendously passionate about. I went to a women's college. I mentor a lot of women. I think this is a really critical initiative to bring women forward into the industry. And I think we have to address company policies as well that play into why women may opt out. Because I think, Karen mentioned this as well, there is certainly women not necessarily being brought along at the same level, but there's women opting out too. Some for family reasons we can all respect, others for perhaps the fact that companies don't have policies that welcome them in at certain critical points in their life, and we want to make sure we think about that as well. So it's an area we think about internally at Tokai. We try to be very open to. We have a good balance of male-female in the staff as well as the executive leadership. And our board, we actually have 2 women on our board, myself and another woman, Cheryl Cohen. So it's something we've really thought about and that I'm really passionate about broadly. So as far as being a female CEO, I am also a female CEO of a men's health company, ironically. So go figure. If I can do that, I think anything's possible, right? So I think, in the boardroom, from the perspective of when I started sitting on the board, I do think there was a change, but that also happened because of a shift in executive leadership. So it was hard for me to judge whether that was just putting, a woman on the board or not. I will say when we brought the second woman onto our board, I felt a shift in the boardroom. I think the way, and I agree it's more the individual as well. I mean, she's a very charismatic person, and she brought a great sense to the table of community and a great sense of sort of leadership in the boardroom. But there was a definite shift from that moment. And I don't know if it would have been the same if it had been a charismatic male. I can't speak to that. I can say it made a big difference, and I think we're a better board for it.
I want to, I thought in prep for this, I thought about like at BioCentury when we have our directors level meetings, and I think probably the women at BioCentury are kind of tougher than the guys. So, except for the CEO. So, I mean, I'm not, you know, if anyone brought me onto a board because I was like kinder and gentler, that would be like a serious mistake.
Yeah, they can ask me about that. Yeah.
But, you know, so I really think it's more individual than probably anything else.
No, I think that's fair, and I think it's a balance piece that we need to think about. But I do think when we balance the genders more, it also allows sort of different phenotypes to the table that can only improve the process moving forward. So, and I think that's gender. It's diversity in a lot of different ways, right? Different viewpoints make a better board. Full stop.
So I thank you. I want to turn one of your points to John, because Biogen has for a long time really had a lot of gender diversity, a very strong, but not just gender, diversity initiative. So you as a company have placed a premium or decided that it's actually worth investing resources into this. Tell us how that plays into a business strategy.
So I don't know exactly per se how it plays into business strategy. You know, strategy is where we're going to go with our products, but I also think no matter what, to one degree or another, strategy is dependent on people, and you have to invest in the people who are going to be investing in the products of the company. So I think it has been a focus of the company to really invest in not just women, but also in all matters of diversity.
All right. So I want to ask Dawn now, maybe a little bit of a challenging question. As Women in Bio puts this program forward to train and get more women on boards, is this something trainable? Is this something you can train people? And do you have a reason to believe that people recruiting women to boards, and Michael, maybe you'll answer after Dawn as well, because I know you've done a lot of thinking about this, will be receptive to that? Or is it really about giving women more confidence in putting themselves forward?
That's an interesting question. I think a little of both. Obviously, the women that are going to become part of the board training program are going to go through a selection process, and they're going to be coming from an executive suite. They obviously want to get into a board. They want to increase their skill sets in different areas. So I think that passion certainly needs to be there. But your point is well taken as to, you know, we also need to why would a company want to take on these women? Why would they want to add them to the board? And again, I think everybody's mentioning the diversity that boards should have diversity, whether it's female, male, different cultures, etc. Because the more different aspects of the industry that can come into a board, I think the healthier the company. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
I think so. I think at this point, I'd just like to see, are there questions out here? Can you, maybe if you say the question, I'll repeat it. Okay. So let me repeat the question. The question is a very good one. The question is, if it takes special training for women to be ready for a board, what about all those men who never got that training?
Thank you for asking that question, because I was going to turn to Michael, and Michael said, oh, I've been on 2 boards and blah. It's like, what training did you get?
Yeah.
You know, what made you so special?
Thank you. Look, I think at the end of the day, and these are some of the frustrations that we've dealt with. A lot of the pushback is that these women don't have board experience, right? And the issue is these are women that are very, very qualified. And I say the same thing all the time. This is an industry that is data-driven. And you look at the data, and you look at the data that shows you, are we looking up there? Okay, exactly. Return on invested capital, return on sales, all these numbers, all these metrics. When you have a diversified board, it's a no-brainer, right? But you've got to educate these people. And that's, again, you know, the passion here is there. At the end of the day, we are very passionate about educating our companies, helping them understand the data speaks for itself. We've got lots of qualified women. We just have to educate these management teams to understand if you have a diversified board, these are the results.
If I can, though, you didn't answer the question. What made you so special and how'd you get on a board?
I don't look special. So I've got a background in investment banking for 25 years, right? And so I've been involved in numerous transactions. So I think a lot of companies look at me and say, I really understand the capital markets. I've got a real expertise. And so what that does to me, again, is how that translates into what we are talking about with some of these women candidates is, we were just talking about this earlier, is, if you look at some of these women, they all have real skill sets. And if we can point out what these skill sets are, identify these skill sets and say, look, you've got legal skill set, you've got commercial skill set, you've got R&D skill set in a particular disease state, and you go to these management and say, how can you turn this down? It's a really interesting discussion.
And so to me, as I said, I'm on 2 boards, right? How did I get on 2 boards? Well, I've talked to people for probably the last decade saying, one of these days I actually wanted to step down as editor and start sitting on some boards. So I spent a lot of time, before I was actually ready to do it, kind of telling people what I wanted to do as like the next step in my career. And so there was no surprise that, and then 2 people came to me and asked me if I would sit on their boards. And I've got, a couple other people who are looking at me. So, partly you prepare the ground for it, but now that as I said, I'm chair of Gov and Nom, so I am starting a search for a particular kind of board member. And now to me, and I'm not politically correct, diversity, she laughs because that's like the understatement of the decade. But to me, the diversity, and the first thing I did when I was made chair of this committee was I looked at the board and I actually wrote down everybody's experience and skill set to see what we had and what we were missing. And I know the board members, and I know just from interacting with them their kind of strong points, their weak points, who's strategic, who's less strategic, that sort of thing. So as I'm constructing a search, I am looking for a mix of technical skills and qualifications plus a personality that will fit with the board and make it functional, because the last thing you want is a non-functional board. So to me, diversity is I want a range of skill sets among a group of people that will look after shareholders' interests and help management where it might be weaker and fill in some gaps there. And that's what I'm looking for and what I think makes a great board.
Jody, did you have a comment? I wanted just to put one word in here, that one of the things that we haven't used this word, but it's sort of come up, is this idea of a network. And that's also a very big thing that this program is in fact trying to do, is to create a network. So Jody, perhaps you can address the importance of networks. And to your point, Karen, you have an extensive network that you have worked with over the last 10 years, let's say. And maybe that is also... I'm 10. Before then, you were just, solely editor, waiting for me to come. What I mean is that, part of this is to make it easier for women, but part of it also is to put a responsibility on women or anybody who wants to be on a board to develop that network and to put those messages out. So Jody, do you want to address that?
Absolutely.
in your answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the networking is a huge piece of it. I think if you think about how people get put on boards, a lot of it is also word of mouth, right? So you've got these boards, 10 to 1, you've got men on these boards, and so people are going to people with board experience and saying, who would you recommend, right? And most of the boards they sit on are primarily men, so their group that they would network to would be the men. And then if you think about the skill set that women have as well, there aren't as many women in the C-suite, right, which is an easy qualifier into the board, so that's a challenge too. So we have to hit it from multiple angles, from networking, from bringing women up through the VP and C-suite. Those are critical parts that I think will also help, but I think that's where a training program can can offset that perhaps from a C-suite perspective. And so I totally support that. But the networking is really important. And I think Women in Bio and NEYs and a lot of these women's groups that are out there, West and many others, have started to facilitate that. We also need to get more integrated, diverse networks going, though, so that the men on boards who are asked, hey, have you thought about I need somebody in this phenotype for my board, aren't just thinking about their board network. They're also thinking about other networks that more women are pushed into.
And John, maybe you can speak to that, because I know that Biogen, so first of all, I think it's really important to raise the idea that this is not just something that women need to push, that is not in only women's interest, it's basically got to be in the company's interest.
Right.
And so, Biogen, I know, has programs to fill that pipeline, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of that and how that works within your company.
So I guess if you really think about it, we talked before about the program and about barriers, and I think a lot of barriers get put in front of women, and so they never get the chance, so they don't get to get in there, they don't get to create their network and then leverage that network over time. So I guess there's some belief, certainly at Biogen, that maybe you have to kind of give a little bit of a head start to some people and bring those people along. So I guess what we've done at Biogen, first we have a program, Raising the Bar. As part of that program, the program that people are talking about, the women in the boardroom and the learnings, we piloted that program to one degree or another. So we chose a group of women at the company who all went through some application process, and those women went through the program. And coming out of that program, what we've done is, as we'll make investments in companies, so in a small company, we will get a board position, board observer, or a board seat. And what we've done is basically taken, I think, almost 100% of the board seats that have been available to us over the last period of time. I think it's about 9 for 9. And those have all gone to women who've gone through that program. So a company gets, first off, a woman who is extremely competent in her discipline area. Second, they get the person who has been through the program, who's had some training, and I think builds up a lot of confidence to be a great board member. But personally, I believe, I sit on one board for Biogen, for a small company we have an investment in, and I personally believe the greatest skill you can have as a board member is common sense. So whether and that's not really something you can train, but at the end of the day, we've put women who are smart, trained, and have a good sense of common sense, and given them a little bit of a head start. And their job now is to make a network for other women in the industry, for directors and senior directors that are at Biogen, and other vice presidents that are kind of going to come up the ranks, and make room for those people. So that's kind of the way Biogen looks about the board system.
I actually want to go back. Oh, we have another question. Do you want to?
So, yeah. So, in our industry, for young companies, most of the board seats are selected by investors. And so, what training program do we have for the venture capital industry that is inundated with males to start having them place females into those board seats? It's a testosterone-laden industry. Perhaps the training needs to be done at their board level, and the venture investors themselves to recognize that by excluding women in venture, they're automatically excluding women from the board.
So I just want to repeat for anybody who may not have heard, and I hope I'm going to capture it correctly, but the question is really about how can you include the investment community, specifically VCs, who are responsible obviously for a lot of company creation and the very first boards, creating that culture from the beginning. So maybe they're the ones that need a training program, I think is what I heard. And Michael, do you want to answer that, or Jody?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. In my numerous discussions, and let me start by one comment I would make. I am no expert on diversity, right? I have not been thinking about diversity my entire life. This is literally 100 days into it. Feels like my entire life, but it's constantly, this process for us is constantly evolving, and that is, your point is so well taken. That is something that we were so curious about as we did more and more work, is that why is that? And even some of these VCs that are also have females there, how come those companies don't have females on the boards, right? That's really was an interesting dynamic. But again, I think this is just a massive issue, and it's got to be approached multi-pronged, so to speak.
If I may, the idea that the women need to be fixed or prepared in some way, to me, is the incorrect way to be thinking. The training and the educating that needs to be done is the males who hold the power, not the women who seek it.
I
I
don't
just wanna-
disagree, and I will say this again. I think it's really all about education, and I've said this over and over. And I think it's about making sure, and certainly this is how we are, one of the ways that we are approaching this is trying to get to as many males to give them the data. I keep going back to the data because I think it's so hard to argue those points.
So I just want to see if I can get the words as right, but repeat the point and then let Karen respond. And the point was really that it is the wrong way, I'm quoting here, the wrong way to go about it is by thinking you need to fix the women, and that it's really the drive should really be on changing behaviors the other side among the decision makers. Is that a fair way of capturing it? So Karen, let me get, because I can see hands popping up. Let me Karen.
So let me make a couple of comments. One is, and somebody said it, I can't remember who now, the women who are VCs all sit on boards. So if you're a VC, you will sit on a board. And if you're a VC, you will sit on a board. It will not be an outside person. So whoever is a VC, they're going to sit on multiple boards, usually somewhere around like 8 or 10. So they'll all sit on boards. VCs are small groups of people. They have to like each other. They have to get along. So you can't simply impose people on them. Now, women are perfectly free to form their own venture funds and go to LPs and try to get money.
And some have.
Somehow. It's not easy if you're anybody to get money out of LPs. Interestingly, if you look at the family offices, a lot of the family offices are run by women. I'm not sure why that is. It may be because of the nature of the job is more appealing, but a lot of family offices are run by women. And if you look at corporate venture, there's a ton of women in corporate venture. I think probably more than men. And I'm doing a corporate venture panel tomorrow, which is all women. So you see, the traditional venture world, very male-dominated. The corporate venture world, very female-dominated. The family office money, which are often the LPs, a lot of women. I don't know what the percentages are there, but so you see different, not structures, but different types of people in different jobs, and quote unquote fixing that is. You have to appeal to what people want to do.
So I want to turn to you, Jody, and ask you to incorporate this in your response, which is that in addition to that, despite the relatively low proportion of female CEOs in biotechs, in not-for-profits, women are very well represented. I actually don't have statistics for that up here. And so if you're looking across and thinking about corporate venture and not-for-profits compared with VCs and standard biotechs, do you see trends or explanations for that based on how they come to be or how they operate? And in your diversity initiative at MassBio, is that something you think about? Could you harness behaviors from one and
Yeah, it's a great point, and actually it brought me to the MassBio gender diversity group that we're forming. What we're trying to do from an advisory panel perspective is balance men and women. We want both engaged. We feel that the education needs to go in both directions. It's not just about fixing women or educating women. It's about fixing the industry overall and getting the right talent pool to all of our companies at senior levels. And that's a critical initiative. And I think one of the initiatives we want to take on possibly with Liftstream is really building on the data they've already done a good job getting, because I'd like to see what the actual numbers are for the VCs, what the numbers are for the nonprofits, because I think there are assumptions that we build into the way we look at those, and I'd like to see what the actual data is. And I think one of our goals is to get a good data set right out of the gate that we can use as a measuring stick to try and build from. And I think we have some of that through what's out there now, but I think we need to broaden that base and really make sure we have one crystallized, set of goals to work from.
Right, so we just have time for one more comment, so I'm going to ask Dawn to end this, and maybe in your response you can talk about what you think would be a success, what you're hoping for, certainly looking in terms of numbers, you'll have, X number of candidates, and how many would you like to see on a board coming out of that, in what kind of a time frame? But please go ahead and answer the other question first.
Okay, well, as far as the WIB Boardroom Ready program, we're going to have 15 to 20 women in the first class, and we expect to get 100% of them on boards, and the goal will be within that following year. And one of the things WIB is also doing is not just here's a class and now you're on your own. We're going to be doing a lot of networking, supporting of these women, and helping these women find the right placements on boards and VCs, et cetera. But one of the things I also wanted to mention is, again, we have this issue. We're talking about gender diversity. This isn't, fix the women and it's a women issue. We also need to get men to embrace just everybody who's out there, and how to get all of this diversity on the boards. And here's an example. I mean, I'm looking around the room. There's a lot of women here, but I do see a lot. Thank you. Thank you for the men for being here. We had a panel discussion WIB the other day, and we invited, about 100 men. We had 2 men come to the discussion. So we really need men to get more involved and embrace this, because there's a lot of men-only boards out there.
So I want to thank everybody, all the panelists, for their time and for joining this, and a great discussion. I think we could probably discuss it all day, but I'll allow you to do that without the mics. Thank you.